This show is sponsored by Infinite Zeal Syndicate. You can follow him on Twitter @_Infinite Zeal. He is a great liberty-minded fella that just wants to share the message of liberty and also has fantastic merch like this hat I'm wearing right now. You see me wear it on every show. He's a great gentleman, and I highly suggest you give him a follow because he's one of the good ones, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the BudsnReality Show. I'm Sean Collins, the guy with a lot to say. And we got Michael White back in the house this week, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm good, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's always good to have you. We had a blast last time, and
We had a good time.
kind of been pretty chummy ever since. So I'm glad to have you back. It's actually been a fun few months since we last talked.
Yeah, you've been busy, man.
Show,
you've been busy. You've had a lot of great guests on, man. I mean, like you have been blowing and going on this thing, man, for sure. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you, and you're part of it. It's fun when when you get to have people on your show that you revere. It's very cool.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Like it's very, you're one of my favorites in the whole movement. Honestly, what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Your work is awesome.
Honey, did you hear that?
She's probably like, yeah, right, in the background.
Yeah. She's like, don't bump his head up anymore. He's going to be coming up here in a minute.
Yeah. But no, like, when people are really putting in work and doing the damn thing in the liberty movement, it's got to be appreciated because there's not enough of us doing it. I feel like there's more and more coming, but there's not enough.
Right. Yeah. So. And there's a lot of work to be done. And I mean, there's always a lot of work to be done, but more so in our movement than pretty much any other movement. I think, we talk a lot about how, the birth of the Republican Party. You'll talk about that in kind of political circles, in the 1860s, the demise of the Whigs and the rise of the Republican Party. And if the Republican Party had to start in today's environment with the same hurdles and obstacles that the Libertarian Party currently has, I don't think they could make it. Even with Abraham fucking Lincoln, I don't think they could make it. If they were kept off ballots and like every bit of money they raised was just to be a choice, and every time they turned around, the media was just shunning them, or, they were being dismissed, constantly. Like they'll admit you're right about everything, but then the next thing they're like, whatever, like,
right, right.
Yeah. I mean, so we have a lot of work to do, man. A bunch of it. And so I'm with you, dude. I appreciate anybody who is out there doing whatever they're doing to support this movement.
Well, yeah, man, it's funny that you bring up Abe Lincoln out of all people because, honest Abe, let's give people a little history lesson. I've talked about this many times on the show. He's obviously got a statue on the mountain with the rest of the cronies, and people revere him as this, this great hero that abolished slavery and whatnot. But he was a racist tyrant that wanted to have black people deported back to Africa at the end.
Yeah, that's the inconvenient fact of history is that he did suggest that first, right? I mean, and so, and you wonder why that didn't kind of end up being the thing. But that's, man, we've talked about this kind of before many times about how, the perception, the zeitgeist of society, how it affects so many things. And especially historical, history is the funniest one because there is an actual history, what actually happened. And then it's funny how like the narrative will change over time and be flavored a little bit different, and so, but yes, an honest observation of history is he's not a saint. He's not a sinner. He's just a person of the time. And, this is how it should be judged. But hey, man, me and you aren't teaching the world's history classes, so they don't listen to us. Like they're not, they're not going to listen to us.
If you did want to learn something about Abraham Lincoln, ladies and gentlemen, pretty much Thomas DiLorenzo has written a few books about him.
Really?
Which will entail, all the fuckery that Abe Lincoln was really a part of. And I believe Thomas DiLorenzo is a part of the Mises Institute. He's a Mises guy. So
okay, all right, gotcha, man. So a little side note, since I don't know why we got into Abe Lincoln, but so here's an interesting thing. So when you go to a restaurant, what's something when you walk in with your wife and they say, "Do you want a what or a what?" What do they say to you?
Oh,
they said, "Do you want a table or a
booth?"
Do you know where the term booth comes from?
No, please.
It's from John Wilkes Booth.
No shit.
In the southern states, after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, remember he was assassinated in an orchestra balcony on a high back padded chair. So restaurants and eateries, taverns, whatever, began replicating the scene and calling it a booth. And so this is really built on some sick things here, man. So when you hear someone say that, that was a tradition that arose out of sort of this odd honoring of John Wilkes Booth at that, the Sic Semper Tyrannis sort of thing. And so, again, another little piece of history, you're not going to learn that at Applebee's, right? They're not going to tell you that when they ask you, but that's where it came from. Yeah, dude, again, that's why it's so important to really know history, because once you really know history, you can see through the kind of veil of things. You can see through it.
Well, I mean, if people actually really learned history, like for real history, I think they would be libertarians.
Yeah,
honestly,
sure.
I just think they would be, if they actually learned real history at the end of the day, they would be libertarians, because they'd be like, what in the actual fuck, dude?
Yeah.
But
I mean, the recurring theme of human history is that, authoritarianism will rise, and on its own merits, it fails. And, we did that over and over and over since the dawn of civilization. And, we were the first, place, America was, that sort of turned that concept upside down. And, really was the first time to have this new idea. And here we are again doing the same thing, getting toward authoritarianism. In one way or another, it's going to teeter and fall under its own weight. It's just a matter of, it's a controlled demolition that benefits us, or is it one that doesn't benefit us? And interestingly, controlled demolition kind of segues into 9/11, which we're sharing today. So, like you said before we got on here and recorded, last time we were, when I was on here, we talked about what we were doing on 9/11. So it's kind of neat that we're doing this show on 9/11.
Yeah, we're recording day is 9/11, ladies and gentlemen. And
that's right. Yeah.
It's kind of fitting that we're doing this, and we're going to tie something in later in the show that'll be a little bit fun. But we're talking about authoritarians and shit like that. There's a few things going on right now statewide, not even nationally. Like nationally, obviously, there's authoritarian shit going on left and right.
Yeah,
it's never
all
going
the
to
time.
stop, ladies and gentlemen. All you gotta do is turn on the news. You'll find something else out every day, whether it's right or wrong. But there's some fuckery going on right now, and I want to touch on this, and that is New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham suspends concealed carry and open carry for 30 days in 2 counties in New Mexico, one being Albuquerque County. I can't remember what the other one is. What could possibly go wrong with that, Michael White?
I mean, yeah, it's I often joke that it's like these people forget that murder is already illegal, right? Like, it's already illegal to kill somebody. That covers it. You've covered it with sticks, bricks, dynamite, gas, guns, cars, doesn't matter. It's covered. But they seem to always want to get focused on this method. And to me, that is telling that it's not really about preventing crime or making things safer, because I think that they know that it doesn't, right? It's about the fact that it makes them safer. They're constantly trying to push that conversation of disarming the public. That's what they want to do. And it's a brazen attempt. Like, honestly, when I read it, I first thought it was like a parody tweet. Like, I was like, surely a governor of a state understands constitutional governance better than this. Like, surely this is not something she thinks is okay. And then I'm like, no, this is real, man. This is a real thing. This is a real deal. And so it was brazen for sure, but I'm not surprised, because COVID and the COVID regime, I think, gave the petty tyrants a little bit of confidence they didn't have before, and I think that it showed them, hey, there's some tools in your toolbox here that if people won't resist about, you can pull them out and they'll do anything to be safe, right? Or, and so I think that's kind of it. And there was a rally, I think, yesterday. I saw the video this morning on Twitter, with the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. I think I'm always going to call it Twitter. I mean, I just think
I'm calling it Malcolm. It's Malcolm.
Yeah. Malcolm. Okay, cool with that. And like, there was like some, that was a kind of open carry rally somewhere, and maybe a few hundred people. And nobody got arrested. Cops refused to kind of, do anything about it. But yeah, man, mass non-compliance is the answer to that one. But dude, wild, right? I mean, and again, what was the impetus for this? It was a child was killed. Is that kind of what?
Well, they're trying to curtail violence in the area and whatnot. But the one of the most fucked up things about this is, she literally came out and said she knows that bad guys are not going to listen to this ordinance. Like, let that sink in. Like, for fuck's sake, ladies and gentlemen, she's saying that she knows bad guys are not going to listen, but she wants to disarm people to protect themselves from said bad guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sean, you would
I
think
don't
that
get it.
we've seen this so many times that like by the time like you can tell just from the reasoning. If it was anything else, if you said, why are you going to do X? And they said, well, because of Y. And you said, well, that doesn't make sense because Y doesn't help X happen. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to do it because of Z. And you said, that doesn't make sense because Z doesn't make X happen. X being they want less, murder, want less bad people with guns. Y and Z are not going to make that happen. And the first time you had that conversation with one person, you'd be like, man, that person's fucking crazy. They gave me a bunch of bullshit reasons to accomplish something that's not actually going to accomplish it. We hear this excuse and these excuses for years. We've heard people say these. And so when I meet somebody still in the public who has not recognized the fact, I'm like, are you listening to the same conversations I've been listening to? Like, there's no way, even if you had no opinion on liberty, guns, anything, walked into it and you had heard this about 4 or 5 times, you'd be like, I keep hearing the same song and dance from these people, but none of it makes sense because none of it's going to help anything. Like it's like saying, hey man, I want to cook some spaghetti. And someone says, well, go outside and rake the leaves. And you go, what the fuck, man? And they're like, that's step 1 to cooking spaghetti. And you're like, no, it's not. It doesn't do anything to cook. It doesn't do nothing with spaghetti, man. So,
but the fact of the matter is, you, and I'm talking to the listeners here, you are individuals as people. We are not a collective. We are individuals as human beings. That's what we are. And nobody, and I mean nobody, has the right to tell you how you can defend yourself and or your family. Right. No one. I don't care if it's a president. I don't care if it's a cop, a governor, a congressman, a Senate person. Nobody who is a fellow man, a fellow human being, has the right to tell you how you can defend yourself. This is the last line of defense between us and tyranny is our guns, dude.
It's such a kind of a trope, to say that it kind of gets thrown in libertarians' faces a lot. People go, "Oh, you think the government's going to turn tyrannical?" And I often say, well, no, they are kind of tyrannical, but they're not full blown, tyrannical, like throwing people in, vaccination camps and things like that because we have the Second Amendment. I mean, imagine what the COVID regime would have looked like in this country if there wasn't a Second Amendment. I mean, imagine what it looked. I mean, there was, what was it, 40 to 50% of Democrats were in favor of locking parents up, right, who weren't vaccinating their children.
And taking their kids.
And taking their kids away. I mean, we're talking about some serious problem. And so, the crowds tend to get dumber as they get bigger. They don't tend to get smarter. The smartest ideas seem to come from individuals. For instance, E equals MC squared was not a class project. It came from an individual, right? Isaac Newton, Principia Mathematica, came from an individual. It was not, done by committee. When you start getting groups of people, there's a relationship between how stupid they get and the number of the size of them, especially when they're scared about something. And so if you'd have started this and asked one person, hey, are you for locking someone up and taking their kids if they don't do this? Well, no, of course not. Get them scared and then add them to, 200,000 other people. And then all of a sudden they're coming for you. And so, yeah, the two-way also, I mean, this is the best primer that I can give to anybody for why liberty is important. So, it's based on the principle of self-ownership. You own yourself, Sean.
Yes.
And if you were to deny that, that means someone else has a greater claim to your life than you do, which you would say, no, it's bullshit. I own myself for sure. Okay. Well, if you own yourself, right, what is a Sean? What are you? You're this being that exists in time and space, right? So you have a past, you have a present, and you have a future. And you as a self, and your liberty is expressed in these things. Your past is expressed in your property. These are the things that you've acquired justly through your efforts and labor, right? Your present is your liberty, your ability to make choices freely, to do something. You want to go outside, go outside. You want to get up, go, use the restroom, go do that. That's your liberty. That's your present. And your future is manifested as your life, the ability to live the next second, right? And because you own yourself and nobody else owns you, and because you are expressed as these three things, you have a right to defend all of these three things, right? And so, because you have this right to do this, you can justify and edify that right with firearms, because now all of a sudden, let's say that tomorrow, you had a surgery, right? And you're laid up in bed.
Right.
You probably weren't in your best physical shape, right?
No.
Right. So, a horde of attackers comes, or, 2 or 3 guys break in the house. A gun equalizes things, right? It's a great equalizer. I mean, that's what's the famous quote, God made all men and Samuel Colt made them equal,
That's right.
Um, and so that's why firearms are really important to the liberty community. We're not gun nuts, we're individual right nuts. And this is, again, it's a great equalizer. It puts everybody, it's one of the rare opportunities where the philosophical idea, the idea of everyone as an individual, kind of co-equal as a quote unquote individual, is one of the times where that philosophy actually can match reality. Because
Right.
89-year-old grandmother and 16-year-old kid can be equal parity when it comes to the use of force to defend themselves.
Yes.
And so yeah, man, so it's no coincidence that it's the number one thing that they keep going after, because they know that once it's gone, they can go after everything else.
Well,
Everything
yeah,
else.
because once you lose the right to defend yourself, you don't have any rights at all.
Yeah.
That's how this works. You have nothing left. And and a lot of libertarians and a lot of ANCAPs and voluntarists and whatnot, there's a bunch of bubbles you can put yourself in, where you talk about private property and how important that is. And the most important piece of private property you have is your own body.
That's right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
people don't look at themselves as private property, but
Yeah.
really we are. Our body is our own private property.
That's right. Yeah.
And we have the right to defend that no matter what. There's no entity, there's no government, there's no person that can take that away from us. They can damn sure try, but it's not going to happen. We are not going to lay down to these tyrants. It's absolutely unbelievable that people are buying into this shit, especially when the lady who's like putting out the ordinance says that she knows the bad guys aren't going to listen. What does that tell you?
Well, it also tells another thing too. This isn't really for the people of today. What they're doing, the progressive Marxists are very good at the long game. Very good at the long game. They will take away 100 rights and give you back 99. And they will do that, once a decade, and over a century, they will have taken 10 rights away. And so that's kind of what this is about. This is sort of, in my opinion, they know that they're done with us. You're not going to change my mind from being, pro individual and the ability to, own and possess firearms to tomorrow. I'm not going to believe that. There's nothing you can do to change my mind on that anymore, right? I've seen people go from anti-gun to very pro-gun. I've never seen anyone go the other way, right?
No.
Now,
Same.
and like there's those virtue signals on Twitter every time I'm a Iraq veteran and I'm going to burn my AR-15. I think that's all fake. I don't think anybody really in their right mind. Now, again, there's people out there, having sex changes and stuff. So maybe there's a couple that it's real for, but they're done with us, man. They're not going to convert us. They want to create a environment where the children today grow up to be adults that have this belief system. And so that's what I think this is about. And so, like, really, it's more like, as much as we talk to each other about this and other voting age individuals and other people, it's really like, talk to your kids about it. Like, when they're 10, 11, 12, they're kind of the mindset, or whatever age you think they are, where they can begin to understand the concepts of, individualism, why liberty is important, what it is about a firearm ownership and self-defense that's so imperative to you as an individual, and why somebody who doesn't have your best interest in mind may want to take that from you. They're going to grow up to be adults that think, this way rationally. Otherwise, they're going to kind of be programmed by the state to have these very irrational beliefs. Again, like, you can cook spaghetti by raking leaves.
Yeah.
That's the progressive solutions are sold that way to people, because you hear people say the stupidest shit, man. Like, all day, every day. Like, it was hot, and we needed a climate emergency. I'm like, okay, so the spaghetti solution is, you want to cool the planet, you want to cool the earth down. That's the spaghetti they want to cook. How do you want to do that? We're going to tax you more. I mean, like, none of this. It's never the proposed solution. Never is about the actual. I mean, the proposed method is never about the solution ever. It's about indoctrinating. And again, the young people too. They're going to grow up. If you're 8 or 9 or 10 years old today, in 20 years from now, 2 decades, you will have grown up in an environment where you heard about gun bans, that they were terrible, that they were horrible, that guns they were the wrong thing. High capacity. They call them clips, on TV. You have grown up with that. You have grown up with the climate change agenda. The idea that you can give government more power and they're going to make the weather better. And you're going to grow up with the concept that, like, there is no objective reality. We don't even have to agree on words. And so you're going to have, in 2 decades, you're going to have a large amount of the population who have those 3 things as core fundamental programming beliefs. and they're going to be voting, and they're going to be running the country, and so or begin to. And that's why the progressives do this, man. So when I see that, I know that it's really not for me. I know that this is about getting my kids and my kids' kids to think that way in a couple decades.
Well, and you're exactly right. And this is why it's so important. And here's an ADHD moment for you guys. This is why it's important to get your kids out of public schools.
Goddamn right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
pardon my French there. Pardon. I don't usually say the GD word, but yeah.
And I'm, and I have people in my life who are teachers and educators and stuff like that. And we need teachers. I love them. We need educators. We need teachers. This isn't their fault. This is beyond them. Okay.
That's right. It is.
They just got to do what the curriculum tells them to do. Otherwise, they don't have a job. That's how this works. But we need these teachers and we need these educators, and it's not about them. It's about the Department of Education and the teachers unions who, I'm going to make a bold statement. They're laundering money for the U.S. government.
I think so. Yeah. And influencing voting and politics. I
mean, they're also involved in your kids' education and part of the curriculum, which is completely evil. Like, think about this. Everything the government touches is a goddamn dumpster fire.
Every time.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is what it is. Everything they touch is destruction and fire and hellfire and brimstone, you name it. That's what it is. Why do you want these people teaching your children? Why do you want them involved in the curriculum of your children? You don't.
Well, and again, this comes down to assumptions, right? Like, you and I grew up in a certain world, in a certain environment. If you're my age, I'm 41. I think you're roughly my age, right, Sean? You're like a year older than me.
A couple years older than you. Yeah.
Okay, a couple years older than me. Yeah. So, I was really my kid having age about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I just assumed that, my daughter's first day of kindergarten was going to be a lot like mine. I assumed the curriculum is going to be a lot like mine. The environment's going to be a lot like mine. No, it's not, right? And if you're not involved in what's going on, you have no idea. And, school's not just about, dude, what's in the books. Reading, writing, arithmetic. There is just as much education going on that's happening outside curriculum. How people are talking, how people are thinking, what they're thinking about, what they go home thinking about. The little side comments that happen, when you're watching. Did you have that little news station you'd watch in the morning in like middle school? It was like channel 1 news or something. You remember that?
Yep.
They had that. And then like if a story's about like the heat dome, if you have a first period teacher who's like, Biden really needs to get that climate emergency going. You hear that every time from that. Or you have a teacher that says, guys, there's not much we can do about this, but, hey, make sure the AC works. Be grateful for that. We need to increase the power grid to make sure these things don't fail, right? You have either one of those choices. And the truth is the system of academia, because, again, it was infiltrated, I think, by the progressive Marxists early on. I mean, it's kind of a progressive Marxist institution. They got it, man. And it rewards, those people. It just does.
You call them progressive Marxists. I like what the dude who's running for president in Argentina calls them. And I think is Javier Milei.
Yeah.
He calls them shit leftards.
Yeah.
That's his thing there, shit leftards, And I'd hate to like single a crowd out like that, but the left is so far gone. And don't get me started on Republicans, though. Don't get me started on them. They're awful too in their own sense. They really, really are. And in a lot of sense, the right is a lot worse than the left, because at least the left is telling you what they're going to do and very transparent about their agenda, where the right is going to
very sneaky about it.
We care about your civil liberties and the Constitution and the amendments, and we're going to have smaller government, which, hey, Republicans, when have you ever shrunk us? Ever in history.
Totally another thing. Yeah. So, yeah, he calls them shit leftards, I think is what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, he says shit leftards. I like that.
If I had just a public service announcement for people is, quit calling them liberals, though, for sure. Whatever you're going to call them.
Amen.
Don't call them liberals, because they're not liberals. Like, no. And don't fall into the same old trap that they're already programming. They wanted to change definitions of everything, and they're trying to now change the definition of that. Like, so don't let them. Don't call them a liberal. They're not a liberal. A classical liberal is not the pejorative that people think it is. If we had, half the country was, classical liberals and half the country was, liberty leaning conservatives, we probably wouldn't have any problems. We probably wouldn't even have a podcast right now, dude, to be honest.
Or at least something cool like rock and roll, or,
something else. It wouldn't be about the things that it's about today. So, They're to me, they're progressive Marxists. It's this ideology of the state being supreme, and that everything is marketed for the state to be the answer. Progressively more government, every single thing. It doesn't matter what it is, the government's the solution. So, and again, it's any problem at all, even ones that aren't real, like gas stoves, for instance. Do you remember people fucking defending that, going, well, if you had a kid with asthma, then, I'm like, okay, well, if I have a kid with asthma, you know what I can do? I can call somebody and say, hey, man, I think my gas stove might be causing a problem. I read an article about it. Can you come replace it with an electric one? That's what I can do. I don't need you to ban them for everybody in the country.
Right.
Because my kid has a problem. It would be the same thing with peanuts, man. Like, they're like, what if your kid was allergic to peanuts? You'd want to ban too. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't have fucking peanuts in my house.
Right.
Like that. Yeah. I mean, like so that's what they do. And they've been taught this way, that the government's the answer, and they defend it violently, that concept.
Yes.
Violently. And if you so much as question it, again, don't just ask a simple question and watch the response. Most people who have rational sound mind, who make an assumption or a statement, if you ask them, well, what do you mean by that? They will say, well, let me explain it to you more. What don't you understand about it? Okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. A progressive Marxist says something and you say, okay, well, how does me paying more taxes fix the weather? You just are a climate denier. You Trump maggot. You probably just, you and your SUV. And it's just like, whoa. I'm just trying to figure out, again, how raking the leaves makes spaghetti.
Right.
Explain it to me, because apparently you believe it does, violently so. So yeah, don't call them liberals. Don't call them liberals.
Well, that and another word that they've actually bastardized. Now that you brought that up, I want to bring this up, and I got something on my screen that's bugging me. I had to get it off. Sorry. Anyways, anarchy.
Yeah, they
okay.
that word
So the
up,
word liberal bugs me. I'm with you on liberal, but the way they bastardize anarchy really bothers me too, because I'm an anarchist. And the last thing I want to do is go burn down cities or go be violent anywhere. I don't want to be violent at all. I just want to smoke my dope and have a good time with my friends and family at the end of the day. Like, I'm not trying to burn down anything.
I try to correct that when it comes up. But it's constantly coming up. And like I said, it's pure anarchy. It's going to be anarchy. It's chaos in the streets. Like, yeah, you're right. They take the word is now to mean chaos. It doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean. And if you sit someone down rationally and you go, okay, monarchy, mono, one ruler, oligarchy, Allah, many rulers, anarchy, no rulers. That means no rules. It means no rulers. And like, oh, or again, they're progressive Marxist. What the hell? You just some Trump maggot? Is that what you are?
And that's the way it goes. And it's like, I don't even try to argue with people on social media anymore. I just don't. It's not worth it, because that's exactly what you're going to get. And I don't want to even entertain it anymore, because it's not worth it at that point. You're not going to get through to somebody who's acting like that. And it's every now
and then you'll find somebody on social media. It's rare, man. It's rare. I had a comment today from a gentleman that actually, I think, really wanted to know what I was talking about. He wasn't sold on it. He really wanted to understand what I was saying. He didn't fully agree with me, but he listened to what I had to say, had another thing. I said something back, was very civil. That's the rarity, right? Like, you can post anything and it's like it becomes automatically this left-right dichotomy. And if you're on one side of it, on the opposition's going to jump on it and just start going. And just jump in, man. So I like to hit and run is my strategy. It's like, because that's the progressive Marxist strategy. The rules for radicals thing is like, you just ignore. So like, you just make a comment and then just never respond to anything. Like nothing nobody says, just like say it and just get the hell out of there.
Well, my thing is like, there's people, and even Larry Sharp said something to me, a while back when I had him on the show. He's like, anarchists need to be nicer, when it comes to, debates or whatever, and don't be so hardcore and whatnot. And I took that to heart, because, well, you've seen me on social media sometimes.
Yeah.
It's this guy in the world, but it's like, here's the thing.
We're not perfect. Everybody has
Here's the thing. If somebody comes at me on a thread and wants to talk about it, I'll talk about it. Right. But if you're going to come at me like a fucker right off the rip, I'm going to treat you like that fucker you are right off the rip, dude. Like that.
Dude, I'm pretty good at turning the cheek, most days, but every now and then, one just gets me the wrong way. or I'm in I'm in a bad mood. Maybe I haven't eaten or something. I'm like, look in here, listen, like, and I'm sitting on the couch just furious as hell, typing on my phone. My wife's like, what is wrong? And I'm like, look what he said. It's really crazy, honestly, because it's not, again, none of it's going to change anything. There is nobody at home right now going, gee, I wonder what might be an answer to some of our societal problems. This fight between Sean and Booty Man 420, I think, has changed my mind regarding the concept of liberty. He really said a good thing here to this. And so, like, that's that's where we are with it, man. So just hit and run. And
that's where we are with that. Yeah. So let's move on to some more fuckery, though, because we had our Democrat fuckery from Michelle Grisham in New Mexico.
Right.
Now we have some Republican fuckery going on in your state.
Right here in my state.
Mrs. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is in some hot water.
That's kind of a description of it. So, backstory for those who don't know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was Trump's press secretary. Duh, right? Okay. Right. She's also the daughter of the former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, former presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, who has a conservative talk show now, who's, on the far right. These people are dynasty. Okay. Like that's just so we can set the stage here. Sarah Huckabee Sanders won, the election of 2022 by a landslide. I mean, not a landslide, but a good 10 to 11 points, I think, and became the governor here. And so she has been traveling lots of places. She went to Europe. She's been all kinds of places, and she's been using the state police plane. And like it's a King Air. It's a nice twin turboprop. If you know what a King Air is, any of you out there in general aviation, it's a nice plane. You would be well to have one. You would be happy to have one. It's a good plane. She's been taking it places, and the people want to know, like, hey, where you been going? What you doing? How much money you spending? Who you bringing with you? Transparent government things, right?
Right.
And so Winthrop Rockefeller, our governor back in the 60s in Arkansas, passed really kind of a groundbreaking, earth-shattering concept for its time, Freedom of Information Act. And so we began having FOIA laws, really kind of decades before they were trendy. And Arkansas is backwards in a lot of ways, but no doubt Arkansas is backwards in many, many ways. But when it comes to FOIA laws, I would put ours up against anyone's in the country as being the most robust, the most transparent, the most citizen-directed, legislation possible. It even pays for your attorney's fees if you got to sue them and they don't give you something. It's serious. So now she's called a magical special session, because in Arkansas we have a part-time legislature. They just meet about 60 days at the beginning of the year. She's called a special session. And part of it is, number one agenda is we're going to change the FOIA laws. And boy, people are pissed. People on the right and the left are pissed. And and again, you said this earlier. You said something about, people on the left, and you said, hey, there's just as much of it on the right. Okay. I hope that people are listening to me very carefully when I say this to you. The same thing just gets used different ways. The same thing. So that's what I'm saying. The same thing just gets used different ways. The reasoning from the left of taking the guns was an S word, security. The reason being given from the right to change the Freedom of Information Act laws, security. You can always, when politicians begin talking about security, you can bet something bad's about to happen to you. Because it's not about your security. It's never about your security. So there is a Democrat kind of left-leaning news organization or kind of newspaper, whatever, here called the Blue Hog Report, like it's like an online journalist kind of thing. And he has FOIA'd the records. Like he's like, I want to know, like, where you been with this plane. And they're not giving them to him. And so like this is brewing to be a big lawsuit that he's probably 99% guaranteed to win. And she'll still have to give it up, right? Mm-hmm. And she's trying to change the law so she didn't have to. And oh, by the way, she wants to declare an emergency so it goes into effect immediately, okay? And she wants it to be retroactive so it goes back to the first day she was governor. And so you tell me if that's not the craziest shit you've ever heard. And if I told you tomorrow about that, I said, hey, imagine a state that has this law and this person wants to change it this way. And I said, tell me what party they belong to. Most people would assume they were Democrat.
Right.
This is again, I set it up early. This is a Republican dynasty individual. Hardcore right.
Yes.
And it goes to prove the same thing that I always say and you say, which is those on the far right and those on the far left have a lot more in common than they're willing to admit. They're willing to use the same tools. They just use them in different ways. But they will pick up the security hammer to do something. They'll pick up, the education hammer to do something. They'll pick up the healthcare hammer to do something. They'll pick up all the keyword hammers to do something. And every time they're beating somebody over the head with it. It's just a different group in a different way. But so yeah, that's what we got having. Thanks for letting me rant about that because it is kind of a complicated matter to discuss.
Well, because it's insanity at the end of the day. Like
right.
she's stealing from the taxpayers essentially. And then if they take this shit to court, it's going to cost more money out of the taxpayer's pocket because who do you think pays for this shit? And you know,
and fair disclaimer, we don't know what's going on with it. Like, so I can't say she's stealing from the taxpayer. We don't know what's going on. It's just the fact that like she won't answer what's going on. And the reason she's given is because it's about her safety and the safety of her kids. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Governor Sanders, respectfully, did you not know you were going to be in the public eye when you became the governor of Arkansas? Did you not know that was going to happen? Did you not know that maybe, just maybe, some crazy people will come out the woodwork and may say some crazy stuff, and that's going to happen a lot, And did you consider that? Did you consider you live in a mansion that's protected by armed guards and state police all the time? You're one of the safest people in the state. Like somebody asking, hey, I want the cell phone records for this has nothing to do with like a security concern. This is about, again, she doesn't want to say something and we don't know what it is. But that's what she's hid behind. She's hid behind the kids. That's what she's doing right now.
Well, that's kind of why, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the Democrat Republican thing. That's why I made it a point to, point out that she happens to be a Republican and Grisham happens to be a Democrat, right? Because the corruption goes deep on both sides.
Yeah.
Deep.
I mean, yeah. And so when, for instance, commonly, we were talking about social media and people's their opinions of political parties and things, you will commonly have libertarians pejoratively, attributed to something like, oh, they're just, they're Democrats who like guns, right? Or they're Republicans who smoke weed. You've heard that a lot, right? And so another thing, if I could, another public service announcement is make sure you correct that and explain to people that you cannot even compare libertarians to either one of them because we are not willing to use force to accomplish our goals. Right. So we're on a whole different thing. There might be some overlapping policy ideas, but from a principle perspective, we're completely different planets. We might as well be Martians and they're from, other, I mean, it's completely different. And so, I don't know where I was going with that, but I hear that happen a lot. And I'm like, look, like you said, a libertarian candidate wouldn't do either one of those things. Nope. But an authoritarian, whether they're a blue authoritarian or a red one, will do something like that. They'll pick up the security hammer and they both are trying to build them something. She wants security for her privacy, whatever she's doing to do this. And this lady wants security for, I guess, her next tyrannical agenda she wants to have. She wants the least amount of opposition for it. And so let me plant that seed here. So yeah, man, I'm with you, dude. But selling that to people is a challenge. Making them understand that.
Because they won't turn off their TV and read books. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where like, ever since I got sick, all I've done is read books. And so, I've gotten, I've learned a lot. I don't want to say I've gotten really fucking smart. Nobody will ever believe that in a million years. I think you're pretty smart. I've learned a lot over these past 8 months or so. And the one thing I learned in reading books is that you have to unlearn everything that you've learned.
Right.
It's just part of the deal. And you're only going to get the truth from, I don't want to say like everything you read, is true or whatever. Sure. Like that. Yeah, but the people, the books that I'm reading are very informative and very, savvy when it comes to money and foreign policy and stuff like that. Right. People have done their homework per se. I'm not listening to some asshat off Fox News or some, ass clown off CNN.
Yeah. In a 30-second blurb,
that's lying to me. I know they're lying to me. They're paid to lie to me. These authors of these books aren't getting, government subsidies. these news stations are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the way. That's the
you gotta
way.
be quiet about that one. You gotta, don't say that about my Fox News. I'm like, hey, they're just as look. They kicked the one real guy off. What does that tell
Yeah.
you? They kicked the two real people off. They,
y'all know what, dude?
Yeah.
Y'all know what, dude? We're gonna talk about the real guy real quick because he did something recently that really fucking bothered me a lot. Tucker Carlson, never been a huge Tucker guy, never have been. Just it's whatever. Yeah, everybody has their feelings about somebody.
Yeah.
He leaves Fox or gets fired, whatever way you want to play it. He comes out and puts out some pretty cool material per se. About how the media really works, and they're lying to you about this, and they're only they're talking to you from CIA blogs or FBI blogs or whatever. They're feeding you government propaganda, whatever.
Yeah, he was willing to kind of break the fourth wall of media.
And so I was like, all right, I'm feeling you. I'm totally feeling you right now, Tucker. And, I'm not going to trust you because I know where you come from, but I'm feeling you right now. And you got to prove some shit to me. And what does this son of a bitch do? He has this clown on his show talking about in 1999, him and Obama were smoking crack and having gay sex together.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck?
I think that, I saw that, coming up, and I was like, okay, my mind went first. The first place my mind went is, why do I care? Like, that's the first place my mind went is, what does this change in my life right now? It doesn't change anything. The second place my mind went is, people are going to eat this up.
Yep. And they are.
And they are. And so, I mean, you wonder if is Tucker, is his content like a mixtape, and he's got like 5, rock ballads and one dumbass song, and that's like what he's doing, like he's got these awesome like things, and like he's got the bonus track that's like Obama crack, and like
hidden song, whatever.
Yeah, like it was a joke. It was like a reject pile, or something like that. I mean, it's kind of, you're right, man. It's more that social divisiveness.
Yes.
And it only serves to, it doesn't serve to reconcile anything. It doesn't. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm sure the ratings on it were pretty good.
Oh, I'm sure the ratings were great on it. But the thing is like the point was to rile up a particular crowd, and that's what it did. Okay.
Yeah. And I haven't seen a lot of response from the left on it. How did the left take it? I mean, because I really didn't follow it much. I saw it and I made like one comment about it, which was like, I think I made like a kind of tongue-in-cheek tweet about like, if explain to me how Obama will bring back like $2 gas, $100, right, and something else. I was like, then I'll tell you why I still don't care. Like, and then I was done with it. How's the left, kind of dealt with it? I haven't really seen any left response on it.
Very quiet, and it's been crickets. Really?
Okay.
My response to it is, number one, where's your receipts, dog? Yeah. Where's your receipts? You're going to make some bold ass statements like that and not have no receipts. You lose me right there. Sorry.
It's also a little hypocritical. Like, when a conservative, whether they're getting nominated for the Supreme Court or they're taking some other position, and somebody comes up the woodwork with a sexual allegation from 30, 40 years ago, right pundits tend to go, you can't believe, oh, look, she's just coming out now. Why is she saying, there's no proof, right? And then he platforms somebody in the same thing just because he doesn't like the other person. So yeah.
And this, the guy doesn't have receipts. He's talking about shit that happened in 1999, way before the guy was even a governor or anything. So like, young people do stupid shit. That's part of the deal, dude. So like, even if he did have some gay sex and fucking smoke crack, he was a young man, and that's part of the deal, I guess,
So Sean, one of the reasons too that I would tell people that being a libertarian is really awesome is because libertarians are some of the best, like making up scenarios and wargaming in their head and then sharing them. Like Democrats don't sit around and go, well, maybe it's like this, and that's what happened. But libertarians can sit around a group of 5, and everyone has like some off the wall theory that they don't really believe is real, but they'll like start connecting things, because that's what we do. We try to connect things all the time, try to get to, prima facie, what's causing things. And like, so I heard the other day that like the trans agenda has been pushed because Michelle Obama is really a man, and they're going to have her replace Biden as a DNC candidate. And that all of this has been pushed to kind of Operation Mockingbird the population into, you know, this is the thing. And I heard that from a guy, a buddy of mine who's libertarian, and he doesn't really believe it, but he's saying this, like, maybe this is maybe this. And you go, I could see that, you know, like I could see that being something that would happen. And so you wonder, is, you know, what is this all about? Is it setting up like, oh, Brock is this way and whatever. But the thing that really irritates me is if he's smoking crack and he hadn't ended the war on drugs, it's a little bit hypocritical. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
you want to give mandatory minimum sentences and not do anything about that to, you know, black people all across the country for decades. And apparently you're cool with smoking crack. I mean, like a little bit hypocritical.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, to me, it was something just to rile up a crowd, and
Yeah.
that's what it did.
Slow
And
news day.
for me, shame on Tucker for that, honestly, because
I'm with you on that one. I think that he's had better moments for sure.
you know,
And I'm kind of, you know, with a lot of these people, I mean, you know me, there's not a lot of people I really put on a pedestal. Like I really kind of have to know you personally. Like we have to talk. I have to like know you in my
right,
life. Like I got your number. Me and you text each other. I know what's going
right,
on in your life.
right,
You know, I don't know what's going on in Joe Rogan's life or, you know, Tucker Carlson. I don't know these people. I certainly sure as hell don't know what's going on in Donald Trump's life or, you know, anybody, even Ron Paul's life. And so I try to not put these people on pedestals. It's hard with Ron Paul though, because I feel like I do know him. Like,
right,
like
right.
that's kind of the exception. But I mean, I'm a little bit agnostic when it comes to these people. I'm just like, hey man, what do you do for me today? And that's when I'm, you know, hey, what you just put out a cool podcast? Good, man. Thanks, Joe. You know, if it's a good one, great. If the next one he screws up, I'm still gonna like the one before. Like, you know,
Right, right.
I mean, that's where I am with it.
You know, it's a shame that, you know, that they're going to put something out there and they know what they're doing to rile up a crowd, to create more of a divide than there already is. You know, and at the end, like, what if this all became true though? What if this was true, though? That's the
See how
thing.
we do. See how, that's why I said it's fun to be one. Like I'm telling you guys, if you're looking for friends that can think, you know, and have fun conversations, become a libertarian because you'll have like, man, if it's true, yeah.
But like, think about this. So now the woke agenda is going to be like, oh my God, Obama's gay. He's the
Yeah.
fucking greatest ever, right?
Right. I mean,
So like,
they love identity politics because they love it. I mean, they absolutely do. So I wouldn't be surprised, man. I wouldn't at all. But
you know,
like, you know, it all kind of ties into like the Pelosi hammer thing and like, you know, the Obama, you know, surf, what is it, the paddleboard thing? That's a little
yeah.
sketchy. That's kind of weird. I mean, it just kind of is,
Or
you
the
know,
Obama butler,
yeah, that's the paddleboard guy, right?
oh,
That
okay,
guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Isn't that the same guy? Is that the same guy
I
or is
think
that
so,
different?
yeah.
Or
Just
that's been two.
mysteriously ended up dead, and then his blood work came up missing, whatever, you
Just
know.
kind of weird, man. It's kind
Weird.
of weird stuff. I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of weird how like these people tend to have things happen around them that just don't happen around other people. It's just, you know, like I kind, you know, it's a little bit out there. But man, you know, the agenda of it, I don't know. But like maybe Tucker's part of it. Maybe he is. I don't know, man.
We don't know anything at the end of the day.
How many million views did that thing get, bro? Probably
Oh, I think the last time I checked, it had like 1.3, and that was the other day.
just 1.3, not
Yeah,
like three. Oh, that's not a ton. Like that's not. So it wasn't like the Trump interview then during the debate that had like what, like 100 million, you know, views or something
I
crazy.
just caught some clips of that actually,
Oh,
and
really?
I think I'm gonna watch that. I don't know yet. You know, I don't like to give too many, you know, authoritarian types, you know, my time. I just that's, but sometimes I gotta know what's going on. So I might.
It was interesting to me because it was kind of a watershed moment for like major media. Like it did. There was a part of you that if you kind of like have hated the talking picture box, like you and I have, you know, because for a long time, this is where the media came from, was right here. I'm pointing at my TV over here, by the way.
Right,
For those
right.
who don't know, I'm pointing at my TV. And so, you know, there's a little bit like you were like, yeah, you know, like he's like, this one guy on a little, you know, app is like getting more eyeballs on him, you know, than the major media company that kicked him off. There was kind of like a little bit of, if you kind of root for the underdog a little bit, not that Tucker's an underdog by any means, but it was a kind of part of me that's like, he could have been covering anything. And if during that time, if it would have been beating that, I've been like, okay, cool. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Right, right. But you know, when it comes to media, it's just, you know, and even like podcasters and people like me or whatever, like, you know, you could take our stuff with a grain of salt too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
I'll just say that people like me aren't getting government subsidies, so I'm going to give it to you how I see it, and
That's right. Yeah.
That's one of those things.
And
But
I'm willing to change my opinion on things too. Like, I might have an opinion about something this week and I'm willing to see contrary evidence to it and then change my opinion. I'm totally willing to do that. Like, people in the major media, like Keith Olbermann, can never come out and say that like masks don't work. He can never do that. Like he can never come out and say he was wrong about vaccines. He was wrong to admonish the unvaccinated from his, penthouse balcony, off on Central Park, Maine, right? During one of like the worst economic things we were going through.
yep.
He can never do that. He can never do that. But like independent media can be like, you know what, man, last week I said this, and dude, I went home and thought about it. I ate dinner, talked to my wife, came back. I was like, you know what, man, I don't really give a shit if Obama's gay. Like, what I mean? Like they can say that. Like they can't do that. Like Mike Huckabee can't do that on Fox News. He just can't do it. It just can't happen.
Wait, is Mike Huckabee related to your Huckabee over there in Arkansas?
Yeah. Earlier I said that. Yeah. Her dad is Mike Huckabee, who was a former governor, who also was a candidate for president.
Holy shit, I didn't catch.
Yeah. That's why I said that's the Republican dynasty. Like these are the inner circle. I mean, like, of at least I would say the far evangelical right side of the Republican Party.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm glad you cleared that up for me, because that's now I'm gonna have to do some digging. I'm gonna go down rabbit holes, which I love.
Oh yeah, there's enough to go down for sure.
But let's move on to the fun part of the show, because
All right.
we've been talking about this for a few days now, and it seemed like a really good idea to do it. And that is because we're both music nerds.
Yep.
We seem to be like, for me, I need music in my life. Inject that shit into my veins. Seriously, it gets me through my day.
Dude, I'm the same way.
What type of mood I'm in. I could be in any type of mood, and music's going to get me through it, And so this will be
I can go through music withdrawals too. Like sometimes I have moments, like days or maybe even a week, where I haven't listened to enough music. And like I know that like something's off. Like, I'll find myself like again in the truck going somewhere, like an appointment, and I'm listening to some political podcast and just getting pissed.
Right.
About something. I just need what I need to be doing is just jamming out a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, like there you go. Yeah.
Well, music's a good way to escape from reality, or even to take you, like, it's almost like a time machine, almost like you can like, for me anyways, I can hear a certain song and it could take me to a time and place.
Yeah, dude.
And it's really weird.
And I like that, music you've never even heard before. You can get all sorts of feelings and emotions, and even setting, like even kind of set and setting kind of comes to mind. Like, and so like, yeah, music, powerful stuff, man. I mean, it definitely is. It's a drug. I mean, for sure it is. It's a good one if you listen to the right things. And we're going to tell you folks what the right things are to listen to now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we have decided to come up with our top 5 anti-war songs.
Because today's 9/11.
Because today is 9/11, and we're just at war with everybody right now.
That's right. It kicked off. I mean, it kicked it off, man. There's no doubt about it that 9/11 kicked it off.
But let's hear your top 5, and if you have any honorable mentions, please throw those.
I tell you what, I'm going to go number 5. You go number 5. We'll ping pong, and if we have an overlap, you can just jump to that number and say, "I got that." We'll figure it out. All right.
Okay.
So my number 5 is "One Day" by Modest Yahoo. That's he's in my top 5.
Okay.
That's sort of the Israeli-Palestine thing, right? This is a key part of geopolitical politics and just warmongering in general. And that's an absolutely beautiful song, and it just strikes the heart of the matter. Is, hey, one day let's just try to all get along. It's one of those kind of messages, and it's for a very tumultuous time and a tumultuous place. And so that's my number 5.
It's kind of crazy because I don't even know that song, so now I'm gonna have to look that up.
All right, yeah.
This is actually going to be fun now, because we might put each other.
It's good, man. It's good.
So my number 5 would be, because I am, in Detroit and I'm a Motown guy. We're going to go with number 5, Edwin Starr, 1970. Whoa! What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Oh,
great.
My gosh.
I figured, man, that, you were going to pick some Detroit stuff, man. So like, I kind of, in my list, like kept my hands off Motown, man, cause like, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good number 5. Yeah.
Yeah. That is, and that was 1970. So in the heat of Vietnam, and actually a vast majority of my stuff is from Vietnam. So we'll just, just because that's when they were making a lot of war songs and anti-war stuff. Like, where's
There's
all
a
the music today?
yeah, there's a
Where
lot
is
of
that music?
parallels between there's a lot of parallels between that time period and now that you could draw. I mean, inflation, the concept of this quagmire of a war that we're in for why, what are we doing? And again, that's the anthem of that song, and the meaning of it is, what is it good for? What is it doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of
But
like we are with Ukraine, like a lot of people are going, what is this doing? What are we doing? Yeah.
why aren't there musicians making songs about these current wars right now? Is my question.
I think they are.
Where are these musicians?
I think that modern day I mean, like pop music, like for you to hear it on the radio or for it to be like up to the front, the top of the dial, I think it's just all controlled by like the same two or three people. And so like, they got like a basket here, a basket. It's kind of like I view modern music kind of like, a fast food menu. Like sometimes the fillet of fish might be a little soggy, sometimes it might be a little bit, on point, but it's still a fillet of fish sandwich. Like that's kind of how music is today. Like you got hip hop and they're all kind of the same. You got this, they're all kind of the same. You got bro country,
Right.
you got all this kind of stuff. But we kind of had I think, but people always say this about their generation. I think that we had like the last great generation of music.
Yes.
I think the record executives were figuring out the formula that they've now employed, but they were figuring it out then still enough to where they were picking people who were great musicians, but today would not get picked out. Like, I don't know if a Soundgarden would have been picked out of the crowd today.
Not.
Right. I don't know if an Alice in Chains would have been picked out of the crowd today.
That's so sad to think about too.
I mean, it really is. Like I can see a Nirvana being picked out of the crowd because it was so very poppy, melodic. There was kind of this rhythm, even though it was kind of different. Like I could see that, you know. But I kind of think about like the '90s and that kind of era and the bands that kind of surround them. And I think a lot of them just wouldn't even exist. Like you wouldn't have heard of them if you didn't live and grow up in that area and kind of whatever. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
I think that there's probably a lot of people out there writing good anti-war music. They probably got like 7 views on YouTube right now, and like they're shadow banned, and you can't even find them, and it's probably amazing. So like,
There's probably that.
yeah,
Maybe we should all just,
yeah,
later
yeah,
on get on YouTube and be like
yeah, dude. Yeah.
2023, just to see if
Word.
there's anything out there.
I'm
You
just
know,
gonna filter by date and put war song and just like start just like scrolling through.
exactly.
All right, man.
So what would be your number 4? What's number 4 for you?
Number 4, and so again, separate the song from the musician. I think the artist has kind of gone his own way, but Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen.
Oh,
Um, I'm a child of the '80s. I was about 2 or 3. I don't know how old. I mean, I remember jamming that song in the back of my mom's like, T-top Camaro as a kid. She was driving me around, and I mean, good song. It's a song about the disenfranchisement of coming back from the Vietnam War. Coming back to again an economy a lot like ours today, like sort of in a semblance of it, where it's kind of like ties into number 5. Like, what was this good for? What did I do? Why? And it's like, oh well, I guess I'm just born in the USA, and that's what we do. We just go and invent war places. And so that's my number 4, man. What's yours?
mine is actually Holy Wars by Megadeth,
Oh
1990.
wow. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Holy Wars by Megadeth. And it's not just a clever name. It is about, how stupid it is for people to kill each other in the name of God.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It came out in 1990, which, was right around the time, Bush was getting ready. Bush Sr. was getting ready to, go blow some shit up in Iraq, which is funny because we were friends with Iraq for the 10 years before that. So who knows what's going to happen to Ukraine in the next,
Dude, his days are probably numbered. Whoever we're arming today, they're getting taken out usually in about 5 to 6 years. Like that's like that's the kind of longest time you got before,
Yeah.
maybe 10 to 15, I guess. But what was the release date of that song? Do you know exactly? Did it come out before the Kuwait? Did it come out before Operation Desert Storm, or did it come out after?
You know what? I would have to look that up. I don't
I'd be
really.
interested to know too, kind of when. Yeah.
What I will say about Megadeth is, and it's funny, most of our parents, I'm a huge metalhead.
Really?
Huge
Okay.
metalhead. Big time. Like I listen to everything, but when
it's like the one genre of music that I don't mess with really.
yeah,
But what's funny is like I become very good friends with metalheads. Like I have a lot of buddies who are like very close friends of mine who are just like, get in the truck and they, Whoa! I'm like, dude, can we turn this off, man? Like, dude, like, you can listen to this on the way to my house, but we're going down here, like to the Home Depot to grab something, man. Turn something else on, dude. Like, so.
Well, the thing is about bands like Megadeth is, while our parents thought all this, this heavy metal was devil worship and shit, really they were talking about like government corruption,
Right.
or stuff like that, like Slayer, Angel of Death.
Yeah.
That song is about Auschwitz, dude. Like the opening line is Auschwitz, the meaning of pain, the way that I want you to die.
Isn't Metallica's what is the song that's about Johnny got his gun? It's
talking about One.
Yeah. It's the
video and the guy had been blown up and
he's like in the basket. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. So Dalton Trumbo wrote a novel, Johnny Got His Gun, which is about a character that happens to. And so, yeah, I think that apparently the band read it and wrote this song. And so you're right. I mean, like, if you'd have told like the average parent in the 80s, like this song's about like the horrors of modern mechanized war, they've been like, whatever. I heard
they have a pentagram on their
they're like, whatever, Michael, you still can't get the tape at Sam Goody. So, shut up. And I'd have to like dub it of a dub and like, let's do it on my headphones, in my room or something, I
like the Sam Goody in there. I dig that.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
most people won't know what that is these days.
If you grew up in the South in the 90s, man, there were no more hardcore Christians than parents in the 90s in the South. Like, I mean, they were like, even though my parents weren't super, super religious, it's still by, just by osmosis got around. So like, my parents could say nothing about like Satan worship or whatever. And then if they heard something like, oh, you can't get that tape. No, you're going to, when you have your own money and you drive yourself, you can get that tape.
I'm a damn Yankee. Grew up in Metro Detroit. I grew up in, the country area of Metro Detroit. But, I grew up hardcore Southern Baptist.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you told me that. Yeah, you told me that.
Baptist. So I wasn't allowed to listen. When I talk about my parents saying, hey, this is all devil worship, you can't hear this shit. Yeah, I'm being very serious.
Yeah. And and there's something to be said about, making sure that your children, are protected and you want them to have and consume the things you want them to consume. I don't hold it against our parents that they did that, but it is funny that like these songs did have a lot of substance. Right. The problem is probably at 8 or 9 years old, we probably wouldn't have gotten it anyway. But like they were saying some real stuff that probably if our parents listened to, they'd been like, wow, okay, that's a good treatise on,
Well, that's like my dad now, my dad who adopted me. I was not always a Sean Collins. I was actually born with a different name. My stepdad adopted me. Wow. But anyway, and I still have a relationship with my biological dad. It's awesome. It's great. But anyways, my adopted dad was big time into he was the music minister of the Southern Baptist Church. Okay. So I really had to watch what I was listening to. I remember he found I don't want to call it a copy tape. I don't want to call it burn because you burn CDs, not tapes. A copy tape of Rage Against the Machine. Oh, he found it, and was like, absolutely not. One of those things, you're not having this anymore, whatever. Yeah. And up until COVID, my dad loved Rage. He kind of was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I can't believe I shunned you from this or whatever. These guys.
Yeah, they went from Rage Against the Machine to like Rage for the Machine. Like,
oh yeah, for the Machine at this.
I have an artist on here on one of my songs that did that too. So I mean, it seems like a lot of them kind of did that.
So and so there's that, but move on to number 3. Who is your number 3?
Number 3 is like a kind of a band that kind of did the same thing Rage Against the Machine did. This is NoFX, Eat the Meek. Okay. Okay. Eat the Meek by NoFX. It's not necessarily directly a war song. In fact, I don't even know if the word war is mentioned in it, but it is certainly about the military industrial complex. It is certainly about the idea of creating the problem, selling the solution, and screw the normal everyday people in the process. Eat the Meek. They are the fodder for the machine. And so that's my number 3, man. I love that song. I love that song.
It's funny that you bring them up because they're one of my honorable mentions, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
I am a big fan of NoFX. I'm a big punk rock guy too. On top of the metal, I'm talking old school punk rock, some obscure shit that most people probably never even heard of. But anyways, NoFX, great band. They had songs like Perfect Government back in the day.
Yeah, dude.
One of my war cries, during 2020, and that's a great song. But Fat Mike, unfortunately, went that way.
He went. They do that, man. It's like, they. Hey, man, I think you see some success. And maybe they saw so much success. And they're like, hey, we gotta just keep the ticket sales going, and we don't get it canceled. So I don't know what they do, but yeah, he went from like it was punk rock, man. Like
Yeah.
no effects, like they're early out, they're punk rock. I mean, like
Yep.
what they wrote a song about like making sure punk rock stayed real, like separation of church and skate.
I love that song. I
Right?
love
Like
that song.
yeah, like he's talking about like how the scene's changing and like, I mean, it just so many great songs. And then all of a sudden it's like, like I said, COVID came out and it's just like, he kind of already went that way though. Maybe about kind of early in the Trump administration, he kind of went that way. It seemed like, you know, I love that album, War on Errorism.
Yes.
The idiots have taken over as an
It's
honorable
not
mention.
the best time to be sober now that the idiots have taken over.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spreading lycosocial cancer. Is there an answer?
Yes.
Yeah. And then of course the Decline is just an amazing, just awesome, awesome song. So
they put out good stuff. I remember, back in the day, I used to be able to sneak into the Warp Tour.
Oh, wow.
Even buy tickets. We'd sneak into the Warp Tour, me and my buddies.
Okay.
They'd be there like every year, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Show. And they were always a lot of fun to see. It's a shame, that they went the other way, the opposite of punk rock. Marky Ramone did the same thing out of all
he
people.
did.
Ramone, yeah. I used to listen to his show. He had his own show on Sirius. He probably still does. I don't have Sirius Radio anymore. But
yeah, he's the one that like during the VMAs, during like the original, the two W's war,
right?
Didn't he got up there and he was like support George Bush and like all this? Like didn't he do that like at the VMAs or something?
Something like that. I vaguely remember it. I'll have to look that up. And kind of hard to. That was a long time ago.
Look that up. I seem to remember that.
But I remember in 2020, or it might have been, no, I think it was 2020. I'm listening to a station on Sirius, and he's literally begging people to get the shot.
Wow. Yeah.
Lost me. I was like, what kind of punk rocker is telling people to conform to the man? Like, what the hell is this shit?
I know, dude. I know it's so I'm not a metal guy, but I'm a huge punk rock guy. So like, that's where we have a lot in common. And again, no effects being probably, if I had to say like Michael name, it's hard to name your favorite, band. That's impossible.
Right.
But I feel like if I had to say you get to pick 10, it would certainly be in the top 10. There's no doubt. And it'd probably be in the top 5, to be honest. I mean, hell, one of their songs is here on the top 5 war songs. I mean, so.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And they're awesome. So who's your, wait, that was your number 3?
Not number 3. What's your number 3?
Oh man, I already got lost in translation here. The Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire.
Okay.
1965.
Okay. I think if you sang some of the notes, I would probably know the song. But don't sing the notes. We don't want to hear that. But
we don't want to hear that. Trust me. Let me make sure that name's right though. I'm almost, damn it, Sean, you should know these things, but we're just going to make sure to double check.
Check the Google machine.
Yes. Barry McGuire, The Eve of Destruction. Now, this song came out in 1965, right? And he was back then. Now, I'm telling you these years for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get into that later.
Okay.
He's talking about in 1965, world leaders who are going to push buttons and end everything. And there's wars out east. And that's kind of the premise of the whole song. And what are you going to do on the Eve of Destruction type thing? It's actually very beautiful, very, to the heart, to the point when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, like I said, almost all my stuff was from the Vietnam era. So, because that was when, people were really speaking out against war, and we kind of lost our way through that. But that would
be the same people. And what's funny is the people who lived through that and who spoke out against it are now the ones, again, simping for the machine.
Yes.
So again, like I said, early in this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, I said, hey, they play a long game, and they can, I guess, turn us at the long game, and they played a long game with the people, with the baby boomers. They got them now out there like, wear your mask, take your shots. Putin is evil. We need to have bases all over the world, and to hell with it. Right.
That's
and even
right.
though I got like 20 million in equities, I still need my damn Social Security check. I don't care if it's going bankrupt, son of a bitch.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So you're number 2.
Number 2. So this is really going to be very cliche, but it needs to be cliche because it's, I think, an important war song. It's also in every. This is the only. I think this is the only Vietnam era song that I have. "Fortunate Son," Creedence Clearwater Revival. You got that on yours? Is that on yours
That's
too?
my number 2 as well.
Okay, we matched up on number 2. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I was sitting there making the list, and I was
That
like,
is
I
my
have.
number. Look, I'm even like I'm ready in the background. I got their greatest hits in the
Dude,
back.
I saw that back there, and I was like thinking this is just part of the simulation. Like I was manifesting this out this record cover. Like, yeah, dude. You have to. It has to be included in this in war songs. I mean, oh, by the way, it's in every war movie, every Vietnam War movie.
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
in. And you know, like even Family Guy has like a bit about it, about like excessive levels of Fortunate Son, and it's like they're walking the jungle, it's just playing the beginning loop over and over and over. Like, yeah, dude. I'm with
It's
that's
such a great song, and it's it's. And I remember that Family Guy episode. Actually, I'm a big Family Guy fan. I've always have been. I always will be. It's
yeah,
hilarious.
great show, great show.
Can't believe they never got canceled, but I think it's because they're kind of on South Park's level where they made fun of everyone. They didn't just pick out. They didn't target a certain group. They're
And
like,
they did it
we're
early
gonna
on.
cover it all.
They did it early on, and that kind of secured it. Like if you're an equal opportunity offender, you can kind of. You're right. It's hard to kind of go against it. So, that's why you have to stay real. You know, you stay real, it's hard to cancel you.
Hell yeah, and Fortunate Son is great because. And by the way, that's 1969.
Okay, yeah,
Another Vietnam song. It's great because they said, hey, we're not going to lick your boots, dude. We're not doing this. It ain't me. I'm no senator's son. We're not doing this.
yeah.
And so, I mean, every time I hear that, I actually get really jacked up. Sometimes I listen to that a lot of times on my way to work in the morning just to get me pumped for the day.
They're just a great band in general. Like, I mean, they wrote so many good songs. Somebody told me, and I need to look this up. Someone told me in passing that they were kind of like a manufactured band, though. Like they didn't really happen organically. Like, I think that they're not even from the South. I believe they're from California. I think. I could be wrong on this. I could be wrong. So don't hold me to this, but I seem like I heard that from somebody and I didn't care enough to even go look. It's not going to change the fact that I love their music. It's kind of like the Monkees. Like I do when I was a kid, I loved the Monkees,
they were
hey, with them.
for sure.
Yeah, they were manufactured for sure. I didn't give a shit, man. Like I thought they were awesome as a kid. Like, and I still do, man. Like, Last Train to Clarksville, I'll jam that all day, man. Like, yeah. So I think they might have been kind of put together like that. I don't know for sure though.
I mean, it would make sense just because John Fogerty's the only person I know in the music business who got completely screwed out of his own music.
Wow.
He wrote all those songs and he can still play them live and shit or whatever, but he doesn't receive any royalties for CCR stuff.
Golly, man. And talk about a royalty rich, catalog.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just there's just so many good CCR songs. I mean, that's just we could have a show on CCR.
Oh my God, CCR is one of my all-time favorites. When I was a strapping young buck, I used to love to do karaoke. That was kind of my thing. I would get bombed with my buddies and we go sing songs. And have you ever seen The Rain by CCR? Was like the ultimate karaoke song.
Yes, I can see a young Sean Collins sing karaoke to that dude. Just I now. Just raging, dude. Yeah. And I was right there with you, like just slamming the yeah, kill him.
The funniest thing about that is like here I was at the time. I'm probably just turning 21, maybe 22 years old. And the bar we're singing these songs in are where all the old people hung out. So they were eating this shit up. They were loving it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I always loved Hole in the Walls. That's kind of where I hung out. I went to clubs and shit, but like
I'm the same way, man. I was always a dive bar kind of guy, man. Like I wanted to be able to like hear some music, but also want to be able to hear you talk too. Like I want to be like I was never a club person. I always felt very out of place at clubs. Because man, I'm not like my attractiveness is my ability to communicate. You see what I'm saying? Like if I'm going to go out there and play the field, man, like I got to be able to talk to somebody. Like I'm not going to be like you put me in a lineup of 20 dudes. I'm not going to be the one that just by eyesight gets pointed out. Like I'm maybe at best on a good day I might be a high 7, right? But you sit down and talk to me, I happen to think I'm a 10. So like like that, like hey girl, let's have a conversation. There you go. So yeah, I'm with you, man, on that one.
I'm with you on that too. I was never known for being the most handsome guy.
Right.
Kind of funny. So people were like, okay, if I actually got to sit down and talk to somebody, that was my claim to fame too. That's
dude, absolutely, man. Because I tell people all the time, I tell young men this too, like looks only get you so far. Like eventually you have to, like eventually they got to talk and you got to listen. And if it's horrible, it's going to be horrible. Like it only gets you so far.
You have to have a personality. That's just what it is. Or you have.
So number one, rounding up our top 5 list, number one, We had number two overlap. We both picked the same number two. And
Yep.
folks, we did not coordinate this at all. In fact, I didn't know mine even before. He didn't know mine before the broadcast, and I didn't know.
Yep. Same thing.
My number one is Cranberries Zombie. That's my
Wow.
number one anti-war song. And that's an easy number one for me. Like an easy number one. Like that's not only one of my favorite songs and war songs, one of my favorite songs of all time. Um, I mean, like those drums at the beginning of that, I mean, just sets it off. And then even though it's not about the Federal Reserve, even though it's not, okay. It's the same old teep since 1916. The Federal Reserve kind of came in 1913, but in 1916 was really when it kind of got the teeth in its mouth with the ability to directly lend to partner banks. That's really kind of when like the Federal Reserve System was like an infant in a crib, and it began like walking in 1916. And so I've always kind of equated that song to like the beginning of central banking, and central banking, endless money needs endless war, and that kind of incestuous relationship there. So that's my number one.
That is a fantastic number one, actually.
Thank you, sir.
No, I love that song. I remember my cousin lived with me when we were little, or we were, teenagers or whatever.
Yeah.
And my parents got us both the Cranberry CD for Christmas that year. Boy, did they regret that, because they had to hear Zombie from both of us on repeat over and over and over and over again.
Dude, it's such a good song.
But like,
such a good song.
A lot of people don't know this, but the Cranberries were actually banned from playing that song in Ireland. They were not allowed to play that song in Ireland, because they were talking about what was happening, way back when the Irish was at war with England over Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Like that. That's what the whole premise of the song is.
And they didn't want to like arouse old feelings. Like, some 70-year-old like former IRA guys like sitting in a pub and they're playing a live show and he's like, fuck it. I'm going to go do it again. Like,
it was very serious. They're going to make somebody kiss their Blarney Stone for real,
Yep.
But yeah, that's very good. I like that a lot.
Thanks, man.
Well, my pick for number one, and I know I wore this shirt 2 weeks in a row, but we're going with War Pigs.
Yeah,
Sabbath.
Easy number one. I mean, it would be hard to like if you run a contest to judge a list of war songs, like in this like a chili contest. Number one being War Pigs by Black Sabbath is just a solid performer. Like, dude, I mean that's a 4-yard running quarterback. Every touch, like that's a solid performer, dude. I'm with you, man. I love that album too, by the way.
They were spitting, the Paranoid album. That was 1970.
That was one that I had to have like listen to my headphones like for a while. Like I think I got a copy of it like in 6th grade, maybe 5th grade, and I got it because of Iron Man. Remember, it's on that album too. And I was learning to play guitar at the time, and so like that's a pretty easy song to play, right? And so like I think my guitar teacher like played it for me, and like I was like, okay. And so I think I got the dub from him of the album. I think he gave it to me. And so yeah, dude, that album is very important in my like formative years.
That lyrically it's genius, and they open the song with generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses, evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerers of death's construction. Holy shit, dude! Like you're talking about this in 1970, dude.
Yeah,
like 1970. We are talking about government being pigs that that send people's children to die for no apparent reason other than for political gain or because they want something. It's so wild.
Sean, I think I just figured out the answer to your question you asked earlier. You said, why are people not making music like this about war? Okay. I think I know now why psychedelics were made criminal. Clearly, there's a connection here. Some of the best anti-war music comes out of an era right before the war on drugs launches formally, or right afterwards, right? I think that people were like, they didn't like that. That's not good for them. They don't want a population, going, hey, war's not good. That's not good for them. So they were like, hey, Mr. President, we think the LSD and the mushrooms are causing these hippies to write these songs. he's like, well, we gotta end them, and like, so that's where we got it. And so, yeah, man, that's I solid number one. I was hoping that would be it. I saw the shirt too, and I was like, man, hopefully that's number one. So
You can by the way, you guys, you can get this shirt from the @_Infinite Zeal on Twitter. He makes these shirts. Go get you one. Seriously, they're
dude, and just a good Twitter account in general. Like I love that dude's content and posts. Like he got good things to say, man.
He's amazing. I'm glad he supports the show. He's my sponsor. Love you, dude. But now you're probably, a lot of you are wondering, a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, that's a pretty cool list. I'm glad you guys did this or whatever. And some of you people who are hardcore and don't care about music probably like, what the hell's your point? Well, there is a point, and I'm going to start the point by reading a Bible verse. Surprise, surprise. Actually, I shouldn't say it like that because I've never done this, but Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Cycles and loops.
The moral of this story is that we've been dealing this with a very long time when it comes to United States foreign policy. And it goes on way beyond Vietnam. This is when all the cool songs came out, in that era and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is we have been at war since the inception of the Federal Reserve. And you kind of brought it up when you were talking about the Fed. A very uncomfortable truth is that the Federal Reserve is the reason why we were at war constantly. I don't want to say it's all the way the reason, but it's a vast majority of the reason why we are constantly in some sort of conflict.
It's akin to saying, my Forerunner driving down the road, you can't say that gasoline is the only reason it's going down the road. There's other parts that are moving, but it's a main reason, right? It's a main reason. And yeah, the Federal Reserve. So what's interesting, and people study the history of central banking and the banking cartels and the banking families, is they made their first big money in the Napoleonic Wars. Right. Okay. They make their first big money. And you know what they did? They played both sides.
Yeah.
Like that line from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I play both sides, so I always come out ahead, right? Or always win. That's exactly what they did. And they front ran the news. So they front ran the market. Okay. What does that sound like? Insider trading, right? Yeah. These concepts are not new. They just were the analog versions of them, right? And so these families, that's when they made their first money. They made the first big trades, and they were able to purchase so many things in the London Stock Exchange at like pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. So they were able to actually amass, become monopolies of industry, all by financing and then making bets on the outcomes of war, by kind of funding both sides. And they did that every time since. And so it was like the first hit of drug for them, and they got it. And that was the formula. And they were like, so it's no coincidence that as soon as they could, they're like, hey, this thing that's happening over here in America, we got it. That's where we got to go. And we're going to use them to do that game every 20 years. And that's what they did. And that's what they did. Just like clockwork. And then they realized we don't even need Congress to declare war.
No.
After World War II, they were like, hey, you know what? We'll just do these continuing resolutions. And as long as they're borrowing money, as long as they're overspending, we're buying T-bills, they're paying us interest, we're controlling things. And then boom. So it's no coincidence that Vietnam happens, first World War that's not declared, basically. I mean,
right.
You had Korea, but then you had them. Korea was really, to my opinion, the run up to Vietnam. It was like the test ground for Vietnam, in my opinion.
Right.
That's just my opinion. And so, they did that in Vietnam. And then, of course, right during Vietnam, you have the invention of the petrodollar. You have, the death nail of the gold standard. These are not coincidences, people, that these things happen this way. And so by 1971, they had it secured. They had it absolutely secured. And they had a little bit of restructuring to do. If you notice, there was some inflation stuff. They had to get the petrodollar going. And that was really what the 70s were about. Like that was, messing around in Iran, yep. Getting your fingers into the Middle East, setting up all these things, getting that going, getting that established. What happens in the 80s? Once the petrodollar is established, what do we do in the 80s?
Full-scale war between Iraq and Iran, which the United States was funding the Iraq side of it. And conveniently and surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly enough, Israel was funding Iran on the other side.
Yeah. So they're funding both sides, right? But then also you had the Cold War, right?
Yes.
And it's the Cold War being an economic war, they accomplished something very similar to what happened in England after the Napoleonic Wars, is they were able to buy Russian industry at the collapse of the Soviet Union, pennies on the dollar. These are the same people, okay? And so that was the first time they were able to find the way to do a proxy war. Okay, they figured that out. They got that down really, really good. And so then we kind of were like in a place of the American people were very, I don't know, kind of had a hubris, like you just can't mess with us. And so, hey man, but dude, 91, it falls that and all this spending comes to a halt. You know, the USSR falls, and all of a sudden, massive amounts of industry are screeching to a halt. And well, we got to go get Iraq. Desert Storm, boom, clear out all the old inventory, everything, so we can build new shit. So we're going to bring the old tanks, we're going to bring the old stuff, we're going to get everything, General Schwarzkopf, all that. We're going to go there, do that, boom. And then that's when they had a hook, line, and sinker, because the American people believed that like we could fight a war and end it within a week.
Right.
That we were that good. And so the next time that it came up, and which is about, you know, a decade later, Operation Enduring Freedom or whatever we wanted to call it. Yeah, it was the American people, I think, were so gung ho about it because they were like, if you'd have told the average person we'd have been in Iraq for 2 decades, they'd have been like, what? They're like, no, we just beat them a week. We just took 1 week to beat them.
Right.
And I'm like, this ain't about beating them. This is about taking things over and just spending money as much as they can. Like, you know, and so that's when, and they really figured out then the other perpetual machine, BlackRock and Vanguard, start getting their teeth in things in 2008, right? So
Right.
during the Iraq war, and so they realized, hey, if you just keep blowing shit up and you let us be the people that rebuild it, then money flows even more.
Now,
right?
bang, let me stop you right there.
And there we are in Ukraine. Yeah.
You just called the name of the game just now. And this is why when we're talking about, ending the Fed or the IMF, World Bank, whatever it may be, war and central banks go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Hell yeah, they do.
Here's the name of the game, ladies and gentlemen. We find a way to invade these countries for whatever reason it may be. It could be, they could be housing terrorists, maybe, possibly, right? Or they could, have this, that, or the other. It doesn't really matter. So what they do is they start these wars in these countries. They level them. We go in these countries and completely level them. We take everything, we destroy everything, but then we plant the central bank. This is where it gets fucked up.
Yeah.
They plant the central bank to loan these countries money to fix things that we fucked up.
Exactly.
Give them an astronomical. I get really heated when I talk about. I'm in the middle of reading Creature right now.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's really fucked up. It's
again
really fucked up.
I tell people that all the time is, hey, when you're reading Creature of Jekyll Island, you're going to be in a weird place during that read. You're going to be in a weird place because it really is one of the most eye-opening discussions. I mean, you're like, oh my God, I see the forest for the trees now. Yeah.
And it's so fucked up the way they do it. So they go in, they fuck these countries up, they plant the bank, they give them loans for astronomical amounts of money, for astronomical amounts of money and interest, knowing that these countries won't be able to pay the money back. So then what they do is they loan them more money to pay off the interest, and
now they own everything.
Stops. Now that it's a central bank and the government's involved, though, this is where it gets really fucked up. It comes out of our pockets.
That's right. Yeah.
And this is the name of the game. This is what they're doing. The Fed is planting a fucking bank in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Well, and again, if you look around the world too, people, at the people we kind of made a joke about the people we were friends with now become our enemies, right? Mm-hmm. One of the real reasons that Saddam was a problem, I think, for American interest, at the time, we just had the .com bubble that crashed, and I think there was some sketchy economic stuff that was going on. But one of the real problems is he's like, you know what? We don't really need dollars to sell our oil. We're going to do that in Iraqi dinars. And we're gonna move toward trying to make an oil and gold back currency for the Middle East. They would have become the Dubai, but then on a countrywide scale, right?
Right.
And without the West being involved, and that just wasn't going to be allowed. That wasn't going to be allowed. You're not going to do that. That's our game. We're doing that. And so yeah, that's kind of where the impetus was for that. And then of course with Libya, I mean. Does anybody wonder why all of a sudden we were just in Libya? You know why? because the same thing was going on. He was trying to make a North African currency backed by gold and oil. He was saying, he gets in front of the UN and he says, every problem we have in Africa is because of the West and central banking. He said that's the reason why we're the continent with the most natural resources, but the poorest people. Yep. Because of this. He says, we don't need them. And dude, within a year, he was getting that broom handle shoved up his ass on national TV after they pulled him out from underneath the thing and shot him. I mean, Gaddafi. Remember, that was it, dude. Yeah. And then, I mean, so yeah, this is not about good and evil. This is not about good people, bad people. That's what's sold to people. This isn't a Vladimir Putin Zelensky thing. This is a money thing.
Yeah.
This is a money thing.
And once people figure out, and I've talked about it the last couple of weeks now, because I am in the middle of reading Creature, the banks are the ones who run all of it.
All of it.
Not even close. Like, I already ate my words last week when I said, I've always been like, it's military, industrial complex, oil, big pharma, corporations, whatever. Yes, they have their hands in it, but it's the banks who literally just run all of it. Whatever the banks want them to do, they will do it.
And what's crazy is, like, again, we often talk to, me and you at least a lot of times discuss, people's sort of whatever they have as a negative opinion of liberty or libertarianism. And one thing you'll get is, oh, you want the corporations to run everything? You want the corporations to run everything? First off, corporation is a government term by itself. There's no such thing as a corporation in the natural world. There's maybe enterprise, but a corporation is a government entity. It's established. You file paperwork with the government to be a corporation. And you know what the largest corporation in the world is?
The U.S. government.
The Federal Reserve is the largest corporation in the world. Yeah, they're the largest corporation. So they already run everything. And so when you say libertarians like myself, we oppose centralized power regardless of where it is, because we know something you don't know. The government's not in charge of anything, dude. They're just the puppets of it. And until you get the puppets out that can change the opinion of the masses, they're going to keep getting away with it. And so it all works together. And so, like, and then again, the statists do the same thing, man. We talk about that. That's those useful idiots, man. Because it's not the government really solving things. It's more reliance on US dollars, on printed money, on debt deficits. And now they're coming for the digital regime, man. We can have a whole show about that. We have a whole show about that. In 20 years, we're going to be writing, we're going to be writing either a really good book in 20 or 30 years about how we saved, the average American and the average person in the world. Or we're going to be not writing anything because they're just not going to let you. I mean, they're going to have that much, they'll have the tools for that much control. And again, to your point, people will much rather care about if Obama is gay and smoking crack than they are about, the coming central bank digital currency, the coming collapse of the dollar. They're much more concerned about that, bread and circus. And so, yeah.
So what's your way out of this then?
That's what I'm saying. Hey, the truth is that we probably can't vote our way out of it, right?
Well, we're not going.
Yeah, that's the truth. So the libertarian, the modern libertarian movement is really about local change, and the idea that, like, we need to build local umbrellas for when the bottom falls out. Like, that's where this is going to be, is because there will be a vast change. I mean, we could get, if you were able to get maybe, like, I don't know, 100 liberty-minded individuals in, like, the halls of Congress, maybe there could be some movement, maybe. But the truth is the United States is so addicted to deficit spending, and the Fed is the drug dealer, and deficit spending is the drug, and they're so addicted that it would be like taking alcohol from an alcoholic. I mean, they would die. They would literally, the U.S. would die if tomorrow the lines of credit dried up. They would die, and it wouldn't just be like, oh, great, now the economy can reset. People would die. Right. People would die. I would be willing to guess that half the population might be dead in 3 years. And so people don't even understand that. They don't understand that everything they have, all the durable goods they have, come from a trade deficit financed by the central banks, like your medicines, your tools, your surgical supplies, all the stuff you use. Every single social welfare program is financed by the central bank. Your entire war machine is financed by the central bank. And so you got to keep doing it. You got to keep the cycle. So if we were able to wind that down over 10 to 15 years, we could do that, peacefully and easily and with not much harm. But I think the truth is that, it's going to be a shock to the system, and timing, it's almost impossible. But when it happens, it's going to be bad, man. It's going to be bad. And so people kind of made fun of libertarians for like having stored food, and the off-grid prepper movement and all that. Now it's like shabby and that's like in vogue now.
Right.
Every time my wife shows me something on TikTok or Instagram, it's like some blonde-headed girl from California has now got like 9 chickens in Missouri, and her husband are living off grid. And I'm like, those same people 10 years ago were ridiculing people like me who were buying land in places
Right.
like Arkansas, in places like Texas, in places like Oklahoma. Oh, well, that's so stupid. And now they're like, oh, okay, you're right. And so
Right.
maybe, just maybe, if those people wake up and stay woken up, we'll be all right, man. We'll be all right, but we'll see.
I think we're getting there. We're getting there at a little bit slower progress than I would like to, but people are waking up.
They
They are.
are.
We just, it's not in droves. If there's one thing I wish I could figure out is how to grab millions of people, and just to hear us out.
Yeah.
Just to hear us out and let them take their own thing from there, rather than just, a couple people here and a couple people there, because we're not going to get ahead like that.
Right. And I mean, and again, that's why they're going after the youth. And because if you want to take over a country, you definitely don't want, the first thing you definitely want to do is knock out military age fighting males. You don't want them. There's no coincidence there's a war on masculinity, right?
Right.
There's no coincidence that there's this gender conversation being pushed. I love the fact that Dave Smith brought that up in a podcast. I do not believe these conversations arose naturally. Again, the fourth estate, the media, owned by who? The central banks, right? BlackRock and Vanguard, who are the left and right arm of the central banks. These narratives get pushed, and that's why, is because this is all about kind of getting the kids out of it. Like they don't want strong men. You don't want that during the collapse. You want to have the weakest men possible. You
Right.
definitely don't want a population boom. So make sure they're not reproducing. Do anything you can to make sure they're not doing that. And then change their opinions of all sorts of things that would actually help them in that event. So, the one that maybe got away from them was like the prepper thing. Like that one, they probably didn't realize that one was kind of going to get out there, but it's so few and far between that it's probably not that big of a deal. Right. And still, I have a feeling most of those people will be back in the city within 2 or 3 years anyway. I said that though in 2021 and they're still there. So,
I mean, for now, until they
for
figure
now.
out that farming and having chickens is a lot of work, and then they're like, "Fuck."
Yeah, and you need more than chickens. You really do. And I mean, and truth is, you need community, and that's really what it's about.
Yes.
Is and there's no coincidence that they also want to ruin community. If you had a block party today, Sean, on your street, and this was 1990, you remember those times. Everybody got along. It didn't matter if you voted for Clinton or you voted for Bush. It didn't matter. There wasn't this. The default now is to, what should I be suspicious of my neighbor about? Are they a domestic terrorist? Are they a fucking Republican? Are they a Democrat? Like, that was not the default. The default was, this is my neighbor. He's probably a good person. He's probably wants the same things I do, and we need to help each other. There's a war on that too. And so that's the reason, like, people say, Michael, how are you so confident this is going to go this way? I'm like, because I see every single thing that you would do if this was going to be something you do happening. Like, this is exactly what you would do if you were setting this up. And so, yeah, man, like community, parallel economies, and just, man, a lot of prayer. So thanks for reading the Bible passage for sure.
Well, that Bible verse, and that's another thing I got from Zeal. That's kind of for the longest time, every morning he would tweet, "There's nothing new under the sun." And I knew that was a Bible verse, and it always stuck out to me because really, it's true. What's been has been, and what's been done will be done again. And there's nothing new under the sun. It's literally the same thing. And the more we realize that, I think we can bring it a little bit closer together. Like when you talk about community, I've been talking about that too. We need that. And you're talking to a recluse right now. I'm one of those people. Stay the hell away from me. Leave me alone. But I also understand, like, if we're going to make this work, I need my neighbors to be on my side. I need the guy 3 streets down to be on my side. And, and part of that is getting involved. We talk about local. Go to your city hall meetings. Run for office.
Yeah, definitely,
like
for
what's
sure.
going on, run for office. Like,
yeah,
run for your local mayor, city clerk, school board. I mean, could you imagine libertarian school board, libertarian, sheriff? If you want to see some liberty shit, you need to get some liberty-minded people involved locally, you know, and not to say just libertarians, like there's some blue dog Democrats out there for real that are doing the damn thing. Look
those
at what
classical liberals that we, you know, the RF. Yeah. I mean, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I sometimes put that thought process, that lineage in the back of my head because I don't like thinking about it. And then when it comes up, I'm like, yeah, damn, there really is a lot of bad shit coming. Like, you know, yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, you don't want to black pill people, but you also want to tell people, you know, what's to come and how to prepare. And that's kind of what I do, you know, and I say the shit that most won't, you know, and I probably don't get a lot of views or clicks because of that, but I probably do get a lot because of it too. And it's just, you know,
I think that people, more and more people will catch on and realize, hey, you know, Sean's not, he's not saying the same thing everybody's saying. Like, you know, and you have such varied guests on. You know, we'll wrap this up pretty soon, but like, you know, Latina had me on her podcast, and we were kind of talking about that idea of like, you know, is it a collapse or is it a controlled demolition? You know, and interesting, like I said, that's kind of a parallel to 9/11, right? Was it a natural, was it a natural collapse or was it a controlled demolition? And the same thing I'm going to wrap up on here that I told her. It doesn't matter. The end result's the same. Right. Whether 9/11 was an actual two planes hit three buildings and they fell by natural circumstances, or it was a controlled demolition, we got the same outcome. It didn't matter. We got the Patriot Act, Department of Homeland Security, the war machine grew. We got the same outcome. And so that's really the issue. The issue isn't the collapse itself. The issue is what happens after it. Right. And are we going to have a people armed enough with knowledge, spirit, community, and ability to stand up to the new thing? Like the new thing that's going to be pushed as the solution, because it's going to be a horrible thing. And then they're going to push this as a solution. And that solution is going to be literally, we're grabbing all your freedoms. Right. We're grabbing them all. We're literally going to be able to dictate when, where, and how you spend money, which means that we control your life. Because clerical error, oh, all of a sudden Sean can't feed his family. Well, I want to go to my neighbor. Oh, his card only works for him. I mean, his central, he can't buy it. Just doesn't work that way. Sorry, you know, send in a form and maybe someone will get on your case in a couple of weeks, right? Yeah. Like, you know, so they don't want people like, hey, I can go to my neighbor and he grows, you know, he got chickens and he hunts deer and like, you know, they don't want that. They don't want that. They want you in a box. And so that's it, man. The phase after the collapse is what will be important.
Hey,
and so
man, it's always the reaction. The response is always what matters.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why I said today on Facebook, I said, we have to get, you know, out of the idea that government's the answer.
They're never the answer.
Yeah. And that's really good. That's what it's going to be, because I believe that the question is going to be a very hard one. I believe that it's going to be, it'll be like a 9/11, but all over the country. And I don't mean like in physical terms. I really do mean in monetary terms.
Right. Right.
And I happen to think that those people are smarter than we give them credit for. I mean, they're smart enough to take over the entire world economy. So they're not dumb. Right. You know, I think that's what it's going to be like is, you know, people savings evaporated, lines of credit dried up, you talk about supply chain issues. I mean, look at farming in the United States right now. So supply chain driven and market driven. Right. I mean, right. and then also, by the way, like, you know, we get a lot of fertilizer from the Asian continent, Russia, in that area, like a lot of and this is a problem because Americans have a diet, you know, they need to eat just like everybody else and probably could eat less, but you got a lot of people to feed, and you need fertilizer. you need those things, and there's no coincidence there's a war on oil too. See, we can go all through this, man. I mean, so anyway, and we've talked too long, but this has been a great podcast.
Yeah, man, this has been great. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. How can people follow you?
Yeah, man. Find me on Facebook. You can search for Michael White for U.S. Congress. I ran here in Arkansas in 2022, hoping to run again in 2024. And you can find me on Twitter, MW4Liberty, MW4Liberty there. And all my links and stuff are on this page. But I get more like kind of following on Facebook. I don't know why, but I need more on Twitter. So, you know, or X. I'm sorry, X. See, I told you I'm never going to call it.
It's always going to be Twitter.
It's always going to be Twitter. Yeah. So yeah, MW4Liberty. If you just Google that, you can find me.
Right on. Thank you so much. And in the meantime, please, you guys, be button mashers for me. I need you to mash those like, share, and subscribe buttons for me, man. Let's blow this out of the water. Until next time, peace, love, and liberty. Thank you so much, Michael White.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate being here.